my first goal in baseball was to get college for free. That's really what I wanted. And if I was able to get college for free from my parents, my mom, that was a win. I dug into it, this and that. We read some books about scholarships here and there. And if you get college for free, just keep riding it. And then it's going to take a lot of luck. It's going to take a lot of, hops that go your way, opportunities. And then we'll cross that bridge when it comes. But college for free was probably the biggest goal that I had.
Welcome to another exciting episode of the Advocate Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Hannaford, and today we're bringing you part one of an incredible two-part conversation with Jonny Gomes. He is a former Major League Baseball player and two-time World Series champion. This episode is packed with insights, inspiration, and advice for travel baseball parents and players navigating the complexities of amateur baseball and youth sports. In this first installment, Jonny's going to take us on a journey from dreams to reality. He shares how his baseball aspirations began and the challenges he faced along the way. We'll dive into the amateur baseball landscape as well, exploring the hurdles and opportunities it presents to today's young players. Jonny discusses one of the most vital ingredients for success, confidence, how to build it, how to maintain it, and why it's a game changer on the field. From there, we'll delve into the critical role of a support system, especially during the grind of the minor leagues, and what it truly means to embody professionalism at the next level. But it doesn't stop there. Jonny opens up about embracing failure as a stepping stone for growth and why self-evaluation, a skill so often missing in today's players, can set you apart. Whether you're a parent, a coach, or a young player yourself, this conversation is packed with valuable takeaways to help you navigate the world of youth and amateur baseball. So let's jump right in to part one of this dynamic two-part series with Jonny Gomes. All right, Jonny, a.k.a. Jabroni, a.k.a. two-time champ. Thanks for coming on The Advocate, buddy.
Of course, buddy. Anytime to talk ball with you, I'm game. We're going to wrap up this 2024, heads up to 25. Yeah, man, we can get into some ball. Real easy for me, a baseball rat, talk about ball.
I love it. I love it. So, I mean, obviously, I've played a role on some level in your career for a long time. So a lot of this stuff I was, I guess, involved in, but aware of. And so I kind of want to dive in a little bit to just kind of your upbringing and your past. I know, you were somebody who's kind of hit a lot of different stages that I would call kind of like untraditional, right? You didn't get drafted in the first round out of high school. You were somebody who had to go to junior college. So like, talk to me a little bit about, as you were a kid kind of coming up, did you always think that being a Major League Baseball player was possible for you? Why did you play the game? I guess walk us through that a little bit.
Yeah, at times when I talk about this, I kind of put myself in the shoes as the kid today, right? And without being politically, I think I would be screwed in today's era, right? Because right out of the gate, I mean, baseball wasn't my first love. It wasn't. I mean, I wasn't, I was 6 years old hitting grand slams in the World Series in my backyard, but I was also doing other things, right? I mean, I was a football guy. I was pretty good at football. I was ahead of the curve playing Pop Warner, second, third, fourth grade. And then the kids started to catch up to me. Instead of smashing dudes, I was getting smashed. And I learned real quick that, let's get back into baseball on weekends, right? On weekends, I was a mountain warrior, right? I was camping. I was motocross. I was wakeboarding, I was snowboarding, I was single skiing, I was doing a lot of stuff. And then it was baseball. But I think I kind of dove all in about like my junior year in high school and was like, life is coming and I want to give baseball the first crack at what I want to do for a profession. And would it be known that like my first goal in baseball was to get college for free. Right. That's really what I wanted. And if I was able to get college for free from my parents, my mom, that was a win. And, I dug into it, this and that. We read some books about scholarships here and there. And if you get college for free, just keep riding it. And then it's going to take a lot of luck. It's going to take a lot of, hops that go your way. Opportunities, and then we'll cross that bridge when it comes. But college for free was probably the biggest goal that I had.
So At what point did you feel like, all right, it's shifted and now I have an opportunity maybe to make this a career? I mean, was it the draft or was it even before then where maybe it was scouts coming to your games and reinforcing maybe how good you were? Like at what point did it start to become a reality?
Yeah, so I mean, pretty much my whole junior college career. I mean, we go back and sometimes, I mean, I'm in player development. I've done scouting. I've looked. And my first year of junior college, I hit 2 home runs and batted 210. I mean, I don't know, man. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, scouts weren't coming to my game to watch me, you know, but I just loved facing that ace, right? I mean, all the scouts that came to the game, they had a radar gun, right? When they have a radar gun, they're not looking at the hitter. They're looking at the pitcher. So the more radar guns I knew, you know, the more eyes, the more lights, and the more opportunities I had, you know, at hand. So I ended up first year of junior college, I hit 210 with 2 homers. I took one day off in the off season and was like, dude, I got to go all in because I knew right away I wasn't cut out for a cubicle. But at the same time, I was totally content with baseball's tough. I gave it my all. I looked myself in the mirror the last day of my junior college season and be like, I gave it my all, right? And I think you got to be able to do that. You got to be able to just be like, I gave it my all. And at the time of my last game of junior college, I had 0 college scholarships. I was like, all right. I mean, don't be mad at the game. Don't be mad at the scouts. You know, this is a results-driven industry, and just the results weren't quite there yet. So, you know, believe it or not, I enrolled into the service. I enrolled into the Marines, and I was really close to checking out and going. And I got an opportunity to go to a tryout for the Tampa Bay Devil Rays at the time in 2001. And when I got the phone call to go to the tryout, I thought it was a prank. Right? Like, how can you go to a pro team tryout when you can't even get like letters or anything from D2, D3, even in the surrounding areas, which would be like a Sonoma State. So I ended up going, and I tell you what, man, as much as we play baseball, like there's those single days that stand out, right? And even going in the draft class, right? There's the guy that was facing Santa Barbara and went 8 innings, 1 hit, 12 Ks. That one game got him drafted, right? So we forget about, you know, just how important today is, right? And that game, you go 0 for 4 or 4 punchies against whoever, Santa Barbara, that did not get you drafted, right? So that huge day, you know, is always just one link up on that ladder. So I go to this tryout, and I mean, to this day, man, it was probably the best 4 hours of baseball I showcased ever. And I remember leaving that showcase, driving home with my mom. You know, she's like, you know, you did great. How'd it go? And I was like, if they think they're getting that person, like we're in trouble, because I don't know what happened out there. And
Wow.
2.5 years later, I was in the batter's box at Yankee Stadium.
Oh man.
Yeah.
So what do you say to parents? Because I think what happens sometimes with these players today, you know, they're playing travel ball at 12, 13 years old, and they're so enamored with these rankings and you know, I'm in the top 10, or they're playing with some kid who's like in the top 10 in the country, and they're not. And they think, uh-oh, like, is this for me? Am I good enough? And it's sad because, hey, look, you know, you and me both, we're basically the same age. You're a little bit older than I am. But I remember coming up and we didn't even have, there were no rankings. Like there wasn't even really travel ball. It was kind of towards the end of our career where travel ball really became a thing. But I get so sad for these kids today because, and you said it to kind of start, you said, I don't know if I could play in today's game. It does, this game at an amateur level does something to these kids that I think has an opportunity to almost like ruin them before they actually see it through.
Yeah.
And so, like, what do you have to say to whether it's a kid who's maybe not ranked or a parent who has a son who maybe isn't ranked, and maybe they're encouraging their son, despite the fact that he wants to continue to play, maybe they're trying to get real at 14, 15 years old, thinking about, well, maybe this isn't for me. I should probably consider doing something else. Like, what do you say to that kid?
It's so hard, you know, and I think playing in today's era and coaching in this era at the amateur level is uncharted territory, right? Like the book isn't out by any means. Um, how much should you play? How much should you pitch? How often should you play two sports? There's a lot of opinions, but the book isn't out, right? And I think it's so funny. I tell people all the time, I can go into a major league clubhouse in spring training or in one of my alumni teams and kind of like Johnny's going to hold court and we're going to talk and we're going to, have a little campfire chatter. And I go down to the amateur level of like 13 to 17 U kids. They won't listen.
Why?
Especially the parents won't listen. I don't know, right? Because what my story is and what my passions are not today's game, right? I mean, I got parents to be like, yeah, you know what? I don't think you need to play every weekend. And they're like, oh, it's my son's call. It's my daughter's call. They want to do it. And I'm like, well, I'm sure they want to rifle down Skittles for breakfast too, right? So
Right.
at some point, there has to be some parenting and check the data, check the injuries. And like I mentioned before, man, I was a football and a core sport guy. And, those sports kind of caught up to me and I fell back on baseball. Now, what happens to these young kids when baseball gets really hard and there's not a fallback? Right? That's when life's going to get real tough, right? Life's going to get real tough when there's not a fallback and there's not an outlet, when you have a bad day, right? When you have a bad day on the diamond, you can be like, oh, I'm going to go drop, 15 points playing hoops, or I'm going to go run for 100, or I'm going to shoot a deer with a bow, right? I'm going to catch a fish with a fishing pole or something, right? There has to be another outlet. And man, it at any level from college to amateur or to minor leagues to the big leagues, I never got caught up in the rankings, right? I just wanted to win, right? I just wanted to win. And it's unfortunate, and I think why we have these rankings, believe it or not, is because the recruiting budget and the scouting budget has been slashed, right? And it's making life a lot easier on the recruiting and on the scouting to just go on max preps and be like, oh, there's my top 10.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I think there's a lot of problems in the amateur game. Not to say that there wasn't a lot of problems when we played. And I think all that these, whether it's PBR, Perfect Game, all that these organizations are doing is they're trying to solve a problem. But naturally, when you're trying to solve a problem, you could also create more problems in the future as well. So I think, as you said, there's no book written on it. I think we're kind of all experiencing this in real time, really trying to navigate it. And the point of this podcast is really just to help these families who are actually doing that. I want to talk to you obviously about your whole career, but I want to stop for a second. I want to really talk about confidence because you're somebody who I've gotten to know over the years. And if there's one word that I would say describes kind of who Jonny Gomes is, it's a very confident guy in his own abilities. Was that something that you always had? Did you always know if I get the opportunity, I'm going to be able to make the most out of it? And I reference back to Dallas Braden, who I interviewed, right? Dallas Braden, who was drafted in the 20th round, 24th round, what didn't sign for a lot of money, wasn't a top prospect, but always had kind of this insatiable desire. And really, I guess more importantly, this belief in himself that like, you're not going to tell me no. I'm going to show everybody like this is an opportunity for me to knock the prospect off of his perch because that guy doesn't have what I have, which is I got no fallback. If I'm not playing baseball, like I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. Where a lot of these guys who got millions and millions of dollars out of the draft, they start to get a little comfortable. They start thinking like, oh, this whole thing's just going to happen for me. And as I think about kind of the young Latin players today, one of the reasons that makes a lot of them so convicted and driven is, well, guess what? If they don't make it, they got to go back to the island and they got to fend for themselves and figure it out. And it's not what some American kid has to deal with. So back to my question, like where did that confidence come from? And was that something that you built or was it something that kind of you were born with?
I always wanted to be confident, right? I mean, I'd get into the batter's box thinking I'm going to hit the ball to the moon and punch out. right? I'd, throw from the outfield and want to throw an absolute rocket, and I threw my hardest, and the next guy throws even better of a seed, right? I wanted to run the fastest 40 and the fastest 60 and didn't. So what I learned real quick is the more preparation you put in, the more boxes you check, is the more confident you can be. Right? By the time you get into that batter's box, by the time you get to that showcase, by the time you get to that game, you can look yourself in the mirror and be like, I checked every single box. Of course, I'm confident. And it's absolutely nothing different than going into school to take a test that you studied for, right? You're first in line when that door opens. You sit in the front. You're not looking left. You're not looking right to cheat, right? You got it down. You go boom, boom, boom. You hand it to that teacher with a smile, and you're like, I got this, right? Baseball's a little different. You can square a ball up as hard as you've ever hit a ball, and it's going to be a line drive to shortstop, and you're out, right? But I learned confident came with the work I put in when no one was watching, the extra work, and the work when everyone was around, right? I mean, that also goes with confidence, goes hand in hand with like leadership, right? You can't want to be confident and then not want to lead, right? So when you want to lead, holy cow, that comes with a whole, big Santa bag of stuff, right? You got to be accountable. You got to do what you preach. So I learned real quick to be confident, but man, you got to put the work in, right? You got to put the work in. And it's way more than just swings and throws in the baseball world, right? There's the nutrition, there's the sleep. You got to get grades, right, to get on the field. You got to be accountable. So when I started checking every single box to want to be confident, right? Because there was dudes ahead of me, and I'm like, these dudes are walking around with their shoulders back, hips out, being like, please call on me. Please call on me. I'm like, I want to get there. And I knew I had my work cut out, and I dove in head first and turned it into a lifestyle.
Well, with every confident player or person, really, there's always like 5 to 10 people who don't put the work in, who want to exude confidence, and it's that fake confidence. And we've all seen it, right?
Yeah.
It's the guy that walks with his nose in the air, but lacks kind of that killer instinct, and is actually on the field saying, "Don't hit it to me. I hope you don't hit it to me." Right? I'm afraid of what's going to happen if you do. So that's something that I've always recognized with you. You've kind of always had it as long as I've known you, and I think it's one of the reasons why you had the career you had, despite the fact that, you weren't a high draft pick. You weren't a guy that signed for a lot of money, yet you made a really, really good career out of it. So, all right. So you signed with the Tampa Rays. Not many people know this, but I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, because I remember you told me the story. You at one point were rooming with Josh Hamilton, right?
Correct. Yep.
Right. So you obviously kind of, you witnessed and look, without getting into the specifics, everybody kind of knows his journey and what he was struggling with. But you were somebody who, I know really took it upon yourself to try to like be a support system for him coming up. How important is, not speaking about him, but how important is it to have a support system in the minor leagues as you are grinding through those bus rides, those kind of lonely days where, it's a long season and you're not always hitting, 500 for the month of May, right? You're 0 for 30 and you're grinding through it. How important is a support system for that?
Yeah, it's so huge. Believe it or not, so I was roommates for Josh Hamilton from day one, like all the way up. And the book and the movie, I saw it from day one till the end. And to this day, I mean, to talk like the best athlete like I've ever seen on the field. When he won that MVP in Texas, I mean, believe it or not, that was on damaged goods, right? That was at rock bottom, and then he came back. But I had Josh Hamilton, Rocco Baldelli, Carl Crawford, was our outfield. And I mean, you couldn't get more elite than those guys coming up. But man, we were each other's like, brothers, if you will, right? We learned real quick that what I learned real quick is like going to pro ball, the adjective in front of athlete changes. You go from amateur athlete to pro athlete, right? And when you look up the definition of what a pro is, that's pretty mind-boggling for an 18, 19, 20-year-old to take on that accountability of being a pro, right? And a pro, obviously, to start with, is you get paid to do it, right? It's a job. An amateur, I don't care how high you go at the amateur, it's still a hobby. So with that being said, I mean, having that support system of the guys in the minor leagues was so huge. It really was. And to create the support system versus like competition, I think is really hard in the minor leagues, right? Because you want to do better than him, so you get called up. And then we never had that. We had each other's back. We hit right around each other. We were in the outfield with each other. And I remember at times being like, this is high A. When I got Rocco Baldelli to my left and Josh Hamilton, this is high A. So the big leagues is way better than this. But that was kind of a unique minor league system. But yeah, I mean, the guys, the coaches, the fans, everywhere. I couldn't have done it without them. And man, I mean, minor league baseball is an absolute grind.
So you said the adjective in front of athlete. I want to talk about like, what is a pro? Like, describe the difference between a pro and even a minor league player.
Yeah, a minor league player is a pro baseball player. I remember coming home from my first season of rookie ball in pro ball, filling out freaking whatever you got to fill out, and there's occupation. And I was so freaking pumped to write baseball player, right? That is my freaking occupation, right? Which comes along with being a pro, right? Now, are there different types of pros? Well, I think there's different types of guys and girls that are pros, right? And the more success and the more money you make, I'm a firm believer in just makes you more of the person you are instead of a different person. So knowing what a pro is, right? So in baseball, when you get to pro, there's no more practice. There's no more practice. There's season and off season, right? So you got to figure out how to get through these slums and how to bottle up your good times. That's why there's 4 or 5 levels underneath the big leagues, is to figure stuff out like that. How to be a good teammate, how to be coachable, how to lead, how to sign your name, like an autograph, right? It's tough signing that ball for your first time when you got to go around. But there's a lot on the line, and then there's an accountability, and then there's a respect for the game and a respect for the alum that were pros before you. You're representing, the name across your chest, not the name on your back. And then, in the minor leagues, I talk about people like the general public, right? The guy who's 40 plus years old, he's been in his career for 20 years. He's doing whatever he's doing. He's probably had like 2 or 3 job interviews, believe it or not. Got his job and boom, he's got his career. Baseball, every single day is a job interview. Absolutely every single day is a job interview for yourself, your team, your organization, and then on the other side, those people watching you and the people that are scouting you behind home plate. And if you take it like that, which you should, my gosh, is it exhausting, right? Just think about, the general public going into a job interview. Grind it on the resume, boom, got my suit, this, don't say these words, don't do that, blah, blah. That's every single day as a ball player is going for a job interview.
Not many people can handle that. Number one, not many people look at it that way, right? And when they acknowledge it or realize it, that's an overwhelming thing that may force them to say, I don't know if I want that. I want to play baseball. And look, without naming names, we've all seen players with immense talent. And we sit back and we look, and maybe they had a cup of coffee in the big leagues and they never made it. Now, some of them, maybe it was because of injury stuff. Other guys, maybe it was because they actually didn't want it that much. They didn't love the game enough to deal with the things that you're describing.
Yeah. And I think to like sum it all up is like, you can't be afraid to fail, right? You just got to know you're going to fail, and you can't be afraid to fail, especially in the game of baseball. And we can talk about the 3 for 10 bull crap and all this 300 hitter gets you to the deal. But I mean, you got to flip over every single branch. You got to flip over every single rock to hope you don't fail. But when you fail, you just can't be, scared to fail in this game of baseball.
All right. So I want to pull something up as I'm hearing you say this that I literally just posted that I thought, it's kind of exactly what you said. So Kobe won 5 NBA championships. He also holds the all-time record for missed shots. Babe Ruth won 7 World Series titles. He also led MLB in strikeouts for 5 seasons. Tom Brady won 7 Super Bowls. He also holds the record for most passes intercepted in Super Bowl history. Serena Williams won 23 Grand Slams. She also holds the record for the most unenforced errors in a single match. So to your point, it's not success isn't the absence of failure. And this is like super cheesy and everybody always says it, but it's real. Like it actually isn't the absence of failure. It's in spite of failure. And oftentimes it's the more you can fail, the more success you ultimately will have. And I don't know if it was like Wayne Gretzky or Michael Jordan, that's, that famous line, but it's the truth.
Yep.
And people like you who have gone through it, who are saying these things, for these younger players or parents today that listen to it, it's very easy for someone to say, yeah, okay, sure. Like you say that now, but when you were in it, you didn't really think that way. And it's like, okay, if that's what you choose your path. Do you want to believe that? Good luck.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you got to prepare yourself for failure as much as you prepare yourself for success. Now, how do you do that? Well, you got to fail, right? You got to fail. And I think the way to climb the ladder in baseball from the amateur levels to high school to college and in the big leagues, the number one thing I think you need is to be able to self-evaluate, right? You have to self-evaluate. And if there was a book to be written, I would love for someone to do it right now, because the generation right now, whatever you say, are not good self-evaluators, right? That's just how we lost that. I don't know. I really don't. But you got to be able to self-evaluate.
Jonny, I think it's players, unfortunately, today think that failure says something about who they are. And so they're afraid to evaluate themselves honestly. They think if they are being truthful and they acknowledge, maybe I'm not good enough, what does that say about them as a player? And I'll tell you this one quick story. I may have told you this before. And this is not just for this one particular player that I'm going to mention. It's really for, I think, kind of all players. So I'm in my office in Century City. This was, 10 years ago. And sitting in my office was Brian Wilson and Dallas Braden. And Brian Wilson, who at the time was pitching for the Dodgers, he had come back from his second Tommy John surgery. And this was his very last season with the Dodgers. His velocity was down. And he's in my office telling me, if I wanted to throw 97 still, I still could do it. I'm choosing not to. And then he excuses himself and he goes to the restroom. And in my office is now just Dallas. And I look at Dallas and I say, Dallas, he's like, come on. He can't throw 97 because this is the guy who undoubtedly would be still doing it if he still could. And he goes, Matt, you don't get it. This guy can't acknowledge that he doesn't still have it. If he says those words, then mentally he's done. He's lost all his confidence. And so this was like a training that he felt like he needed to do to reinforce, like, I still got it. So I'm kind of drawing a parallel a little bit with your point. It's like, well, maybe there needed to be a little bit of a self-awareness of like, okay, maybe I could still throw 97, but I'm not right now and I'm not capable right now. So what do I need to do in order to do it? Maybe that was a more appropriate approach, but that just kind of gets more so into the mindset of athletes who are so afraid of just being honest out of fear of like, if I'm being honest, then what does this say about me?
Yeah, and I think, and I love when these guys talk. We've watched, I think, like 3 of the greats kind of pucker down, and they know they're puckering down to talk about it. And that was like CC Sabathia towards the end, talks about like he didn't have it. And if you watch CC, basically what he did is that back foot slider to a righty, he just backdoored it. He knew he didn't have that big washout slider. Max Scherzer, right, talking about, and Justin Verlander talking about that elevated heater, right? Well, that elevated heater is only good when you got 97 behind it. So listening to those guys, right, kind of evolve into what they are today, and that's self-evaluated, right? It really is. How do you teach it? I don't know, man, but like, I mean, being accountable for where your feet are and being in a results-driven industry, and to be able to step back and look at your best coach that you'll ever have in this game, and that's the mirror, right? Looking in the mirror and just knowing what you got and what you got that day, it is really, really valuable for the game of baseball, as long as it is and as hard as it is.
Well, and speaking, I guess specifically about like Albert Pujols, right? Who everybody knows, first 10 years of his career, he was arguably the best hitter, maybe the
Ever.
best right-handed hitter to ever play the game, right? He signs with the Angels, and then he goes into a little bit of a slump for several years. Um, he goes back to St. Louis at the end of his career, and if you just watch his swing and the difference between that last year and the first year, like vastly different. I think with Albert, and I'm speaking for him, but I think what he ended up doing was like he tried to stick with what he knew so long until it just didn't work anymore. And then it's like, all right, I'm either going to keep getting hit over the head with this, or I got to make an adjustment. And so I have to do this now, right? So I think most of the time what happens is players want to keep holding on to maybe what's worked in the past until, oh, wait a minute. If I don't make this adjustment, like I won't be able to play this game at this high level anymore. And so to your point about Scherzer and Sabathia and these guys, they probably almost in a sense are like, I want to succeed so bad, I better make this switch, or like I'm going to be kicking myself in the teeth and in front of everybody every single day.
Right. And we're mentioning, future Hall of Famers right now, but know that could happen your junior year in high school. Know that can happen your sophomore year in college, right? You got to be able to make the adjustment, right? You got to be able to self-evaluate and being like, this leg kick isn't working, right? This slider just keeps getting waffled, right? My 88-mile-an-hour fastball just isn't cutting it. We got to figure out something immediately, like fast. One of the hardest things to do as a baseball player is an in-game adjustment, right? And an in-season adjustment. So at times you're going to have to do that, and you're going to have to trust the process that you're putting your time and effort into. But yeah, like we mentioned, the 700 homer guy and these Hall of Famers, but no, that happened too in high school, in college, and in the minor leagues, that you just can't keep running that same stuff out there. There's a video that I have. It's like Mike Trout, Tulo, Baez, Bryant, and it's like their high school videos kind of like clipped in. And then right after, it's them like hitting homers in the big leagues. And their stances are totally different, right? Their everything is like totally different, from tall to low to hands up to hands down. And baseball is a game of adjustments, and it's who can make the adjustments the fastest, right? That's basically what it is. And to be able to make an adjustment, you got to be able to self-evaluate. Like what I'm running out there right now just isn't working.
Yeah. All right. Before we move on from the minor leagues, last question on the minor leagues. What's the hardest thing about being a minor league player?
Truthfully, I think, like I mentioned, we can do the travel. That's fine. You're still young, right? You're 20 years old. You can sleep on a bus. I don't care. Bouncing around hotels is what it is. Not having that adrenaline with a small crowd, but like no practice, right? For the first time in your life, right? There's no practice. You play Friday, you have a good game. You play Saturday, you have a good game. You play Sunday, you kind of hang in there. You have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Maybe you got a Wednesday game in there to iron things out, right? You don't have time to iron things out, right? You don't have a lift day. You don't have a video day. You don't have a day off. And just knowing when you click over to the minor leagues and being a pro athlete, like you got to figure stuff out from noon to 7, right? That's your window, right? From noon to 7. And you got to flush what happened yesterday. You got to bottle up what happened yesterday. But just knowing like the game doesn't stop, the grass doesn't stop growing for you, right? So you got to be able to make those adjustments on the fly, and you got to be able to self-evaluate, like what went wrong yesterday, right? And sometimes these guys, especially today's era with so much information, they go down these huge freaking rabbit holes. When I was in player development, talking to these like young kids that want to break all this crap down, I'm like, bro, you swung at a ball. That's what happened. I don't care where your hands went, your scap went, your balance, your biometric, you're like this or that. You swung at a ball. Now let's find out why you swung at that ball. You were probably late. It's probably a timing. Like, I think probably 75 to 80% of the time when you get out, you're either late or you swung at a ball, right? So if we can put those two things above like everything else, like we'll be in great shape. So I think the hardest part about playing in the minor leagues is no practice.
That's a great point. That's something that I think a lot of people don't realize is such a difficult thing, right? But I mean, just think about it. You know, in high school, you're playing probably 3 games a week during the season, by the way, which is a very short time relative to like a professional season. And yeah, guess what happens when you go 0 for 4 with 4 strikeouts? Oh, you got 2 days to figure it out and, hey, flush it mentally, get a good night's sleep, you know, get away from the game, come back the next day, take some flips, like work through it, watch some video. Oh yeah, you're all good.
You're back. You are back.
Yeah.
I mean, now, you got, so you start at 7, you're done at 10. You got 12 hours to fix it, right? Throughout 6 months, these 12-hour clips at a time, right? And then sometimes you have 6 seconds, right? That's in between pitches, 6 to 12 seconds. In between pitches is how fast you got to make that adjustment. So in the minor leagues, it's a race to adjustments and who can make them the fastest.
Yeah, when it's never when you're, hitting 500 for the month. It's always when you're hitting a buck for the month and everything's starting to speed up on you. The 6-hour time frame that you have to work on, it doesn't feel like 6 hours anymore. It feels like 6 minutes. You're like, oh shit, I'm already going to the field. Oh man, I'm not even like wrapping my head around what's going on yet.
Right. And you got to lift, you got to eat, you got to hang out with the boys. You got defensive stuff too, right? You roll to the yard and all of a sudden they want you to play left instead of playing right. They want you ground balls at third. Now you got ground balls at first and you're like, dude, I got to figure this swing out. And you're doing this, you're doing that, and you're throwing. We got infield and we got conditioning today. The boys got in trouble. We got to get lectured for what happened. And you're like, gosh, there's so much on the plate right now. Life comes fast.
Well, so this is why people need to hear this. Like, you see NFL players and they go straight from college to the NFL. And I know a lot of people in baseball are like, how come, baseball can't be that way? This is why. Because the game that you've grown up playing doesn't operate the same at the next level. It's vastly different.
Yeah.
So there's naturally going to be this, like, you got to get acclimated to that game. Like you're climbing Mount Everest. Like you got to go to base camp for a little while.
Yeah.
To get acclimated.
But at the same time, like when we simplify it, right? So outside of hits in a 6-month season, if you did 3 of something a month, that's 18, right? So if you got 3 homers a month and 3 stolen bases a month, you're 18-18. If you can give me 1 more, if you can get a 4 and a 4 throughout you're a 20-20 guy, right? That's 3. Right? If you can get 3 doubles a month, 3 homers a month, 3 stolen bases a month, you're knocking on the door of 20-20-20. Right? So it's so big, but if you can condense the season into today, condense the season into this at bat, right? And that's what I used to do a lot. I'd condense my at bats into 10, right? In the minor leagues, right? If I'm 2 for 9, going into that 10th at bat is a grind, right? This game's too hard to turn off and turn on, but you can turn it up. Absolutely, you can turn it up. No one on, no one out in the 4th, and I'm on there grinding my helmet, doing all this. Everyone's like, whoa. I'm like, that was my 10th at bat, 10th, right? Or it's July 26th, and I got 1 homer, and I got 1 double. And I'm like, dude, I got 4 days to go deep and hit a double to hit my 3-3, right? So as crazy as it is and as long as it is, if you can find a way to simplify things, right? And just get down to those. How easy is it, right? If you're going to play 26 games, if you're to hit 3 homers and 3 doubles and 3 stolen bases, right? And maybe you don't, right? So, even in the minor leagues, a 10-10-10 season's pretty good. Right. So checking those boxes and simplifying the game and locking into that at bat and that day, I think is really important.
Love it. All right. So now let's get into the big leagues a little bit. So you've won 2 World Series titles. What's the best moment as a player that you had in the big leagues?
So, there's a lot. There is a lot because I was fortunate just to make it to the big leagues and every single day. And I truly did think that every season was my last, right? I thought, and I had to grind, I had to kick and scratch, but that's just what I was cut out for. and it makes me appreciate today and my career so much more.